By way of introduction, my name is Sean McNamara. I am the manager of the MLC's Publisher Services team.
Hey all, my name is Evan Lay, and I'm a specialist here on the MLC Publisher Services team.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We like to have these calls on a semi-regular basis. I think they're bi-monthly now, where we will open things up to a general Q&A, any questions you might have about what the MLC does and doesn't do, how we can help you best work through our portal, the health of your catalogs, you name it. We'll try to answer it in this open Q&A. First, we will have a brief deck that does give you some top line do's and don'ts, what we do and what we don't do, the various points of what the MLC works on in terms of your catalog and mechanical licensing, and hopefully that'll provide some clarification, but then we will be happy to answer any further questions you have after that. The one note I will give you is that if you're going to send us a question, please pop it in the Q&A box rather than the chat box. When it comes down to it, I'll be using the Q&A box, and I don't want to miss any questions. I will not be referring to the chat box, so please, if you have something to ask us, make sure it's there so that we see it and that we can address it. With that said, I'm going to present my screen, and I'm going to ask Evan to make sure that it all looks good. Evan, can you see that?
Yep, there it is.
Excellent. Okay. So, okay. Did not want to cooperate there for a second, but there we go. All right. So if you are already having such a good time talking to us and listening to us talk about the MLC, we encourage you to connect with us after this webinar. Of course, we have our email addresses, our portal, our phone numbers, but if you like fun social media content, we have lots of that for you across a number of different channels, whether it be LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, and we encourage you to give us a follow there. We are happy to connect with you there. I think we put up some really great content. Personally, I'm an Instagram person, can really vouch for our stories and our posts. They're really great. We would be happy to hear from you there. All right, so as I mentioned, we'll give you a few kind of basic pointers about what the MLC does and doesn't do. Hopefully this provides some clarification, but after this, if you have any questions about any of the points that we raise or outside of those points, please let us know. I think it's first important to note that the MLC establishes and maintains a public database of musical works ownership information. That means that we have a database of publishing shares, writers on a song, etc. Whether you're a member or not, with the passage of the Music Modernization Act in 2018, we were charged with creating this database that anybody could access at any time. So you don't need to be a member. If you are curious, as I was before I worked in mechanical licensing, who a publisher or a songwriter on a song was, you can access our public search tool available to anybody, and you can look up that information. Using that public database and using the data that publishers and self-administered songwriters register to it, we administer a blanket license that covers mechanical rights available to eligible DSPs operating in the US. So that's your Spotify's, your Apple Music's, your Tidal's. We then take all of that usage from the DSPs and we match that reporting data from the DSPs to the MLC's musical works ownership data. That goes back to my first point about the public data. We take the two sides of the equation. We take the usage and sound recording information from the DSPs, match it to the public database information and publishers and self-administered songwriters catalog information. And with those two pieces kind of matched together, we collect and distribute US digital audio mechanical royalties to music publishers, administrators, foreign CMOs, and also self-administered songwriters, composers, and lyricists. That means we are taking those two pieces and we are paying you what you are due from usage of your works at the DSPs. I will kick it over to Evan, who's going to briefly touch on what the MLC doesn't do, which can be just as important.
Great, thanks, Sean. So yeah, as Sean mentioned, it's definitely important to know what the MLC does not do. So for starters, the MLC does not administer performance rights for musical works or collect performance royalties. Those are handled by separate organizations. The MLC also does not administer digital performance rights for sound recordings or collect digital performance royalties. Likewise, the MLC does not administer mechanical rights or collect mechanical royalties for physical products. The MLC is only really involved in the digital space. The MLC does not administer any licenses or collect any royalties related to the use of musical works in audiovisual products. So those are going to be any YouTube videos, any uses on like Netflix or Amazon, things like that, or an Amazon movie, something like that. Anything that has a visual component is going to fall outside of the MLC's scope of work. And lastly, the MLC does not administer licenses or collect royalties for the use of musical works outside of the United States. So we're solely focused on those usages within the US. So kind of to recap, the MLC does not replace your PROs. So those are your ASCAPs, BMIs, CSACs. If you have an agreement with those organizations, it'll still be necessary to maintain those agreements so that you can make sure you're receiving the whole piece of the pie. And likewise, the MLC does not replace Sound Exchange. That, again, covers a different type of royalty. So to make sure you're getting everything, you'll want to maintain your relationship with them as well.
Fantastic. So there's a lot of things that we don't do, but we're pretty powerful in what we can do for you. And with that said, I think I will stop sharing my screen. There's a brief 2-slide presentation and get into your questions. So again, I see a few things in the chat box. I see a few in the Q&A box. Again, I'm only going to be referring to the Q&A box just for kind of ease of use. So if you have some questions, please pop them in the Q&A box and we will be able to address them as soon as they come in. Let's get into it. Andrea has a great question. Andrea says, we use Songtrust to administer our publishing catalog. Do you receive registrations from Songtrust, or should we be importing them to the MLC separately? If so, how do publishing administrators make an account for multiple songwriters? So the answer to your question is an easy one. We do receive registrations from Songtrust. The way that this kind of goes with any general administrator that you might be working with, if you don't administer your shares or what you represent on the mechanical side of the equation directly, if you hire a Songtrust, or there's CD Baby offers similar services like that, and they would be responsible for registering your works with the MLC, making any changes to your works at the MLC, and separately, any payments will be made to them, statements will be made available to them. So essentially, if you are administered by Songtrust, Songtrust is taking care of all of the MLC business on your behalf. If you had any questions about updates to your works, statements, payments, all that, we would suggest reaching out to Songtrust because they would be our point person for your catalog.
Okay. All right, so we have 2 questions from Philip Stein and Michael that seem to be kind of related, so I'm going to throw them both up for everyone to see. They both kind of have to do with the MLC and our relationship to HFA, or the Harry Fox Agency. So Philip is asking, we're a publishing administrator. When we add a publishing client, what is the best practice for onboarding their new publishing entity with the MLC under a parent account so that we can start registering their works and that the associated revenue generated is paid with us? With HFA, we use the email HFA's client services to create a P-numbered publisher account that was nested under a parent account. This process does not appear to be as straightforward with the MLC, and the process that was explained to us appears to be a workaround procedure. Please let us know the best way to onboard a new publisher account. And then Michael is asking about that we're HFA members, and can you clarify the flow of works information from them to the MLC? So basically, this it's important to note that the HFA is the MLC's primary technology vendor. So data flows back and forth on a continuous basis between the 2 databases. So starting with Michael, no, it's not necessary to re-register everything with the MLC if it's registered with HFA. Things are going to flow back and forth. So really, you can register with either one, and that data is going to go back and forth between the 2 organizations. It really depends on your preference. The only wrong way to do it really would be to register with both, because then that would create duplicate registrations. So kind of jumping back to Philip, you can continue to do that process of creating a P number with HFA because that information does flow freely between the two databases. By continuing to create any new P numbers with HFA, that's going to flow into the MLC database. So if that's the process that's been working for you, I'd say kind of go ahead and continue doing that.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, the thing, that's exactly the thing to note about HFA, is that we are two separate organizations, but as they are our data vendor, we get the updates that they get updated. So good questions. Let's go back. So we got a good question in from Jeff. Did get a follow-up though. First, I want to address from James. James asks, following up with the first question pertaining to Song Trust, does DistroKid fall under that as well, along with CD Baby? So that might be, if you have a deal with either one of those organizations, or if you work with either one of those organizations, I would reach out and discuss that matter with them. I know that they offer similar services whereby they administer your publishing. That's something you would opt into, though. If you have any questions about whether you're opted into that or not, I would reach out to your administrator. But kind of my sort of gray answer, my gray area answer, short answer is they do offer those services, and the same thing would apply. They would be the administrator for your catalog, essentially our point person for your catalog. Jeff had another great question. For a catalog registered today, how far retroactively will the MLC go back for figuring out what is owed? Essentially, there's sort of two answers to this. For the most part, it's important to note that we administer what falls under what's called the blanket license. The blanket license had an effective date of January 1st, 2021 and forward. That's primarily what we collect and distribute to rights holders with our monthly distributions. However, there is also what we colloquially call the historical unmatched, which refers to I think a $500 million settlement with the various DSPs, whereby they provide us with data and money that had not previously been paid out or distributed to any publishers or songwriters in the past. And we are working DSP by DSP on processing all that information out to you. So I say that's there's sort of yes and no there, because there may very well be works that are due royalties of yours from years past. Could be 2018. I've seen as far back as 2013 in some instances. However, I can't say that concretely means there's money waiting for you there. What we have is what the DSPs have provided us. And there's a chance that the royalties you expect are not there, the usage or your works are not in that data set. They're not in those royalties. And if that's the case, unfortunately, there's nothing further we can do. This is kind of the lump sum of royalties and data that they have provided for us. And if you're not seeing expected royalties or usage from time periods before 2021, then we would encourage you to reach out to the DSPs directly, because we're sort of at the end of what we can do with any royalties before 2021.
Great. So Rhonda's asking, I'm not sure of some of my shares on some of the songs I wrote. Who can help me find this out, and will it be corrected for me? So Rhonda, this really plays into kind of the MLC's mission statement of play your part, where the splits of a song are really dependent on you and your collaborators. It can really be anything. So even if it was written by two people, commonly that may be 50-50, but it could be 75-25, depending on what's agreed upon between you and the other writers. So in those instances for those works, it would be necessary to reach out to your collaborators on the works and make sure that you're on the same page about what your shares are. And in terms of what will be corrected for you, the MLC is, the data in the MLC database is really powered by y'all as the users. So we really do ask that everyone plays their part in terms of registering and making sure your data is as accurate as possible. While the MLC does strive to make sure everything is as accurate as it can be, you really are going to be kind of the most knowledgeable on your own data. So making sure that you are on top of what your splits are, what works should be registered for you, and then inputting that information via your MLC portal is going to be the best way to make sure everything is accurate.
That's great. Another follow-up to our kind of admin chat with James. James asks, do I need to have direct deposit with HFA and the MLC if I have an admin with CD Baby? Again, that would go to the nature of your agreement with CD Baby. More than likely, again, if they are administering your works on your behalf, they will be paid directly to be distributing those royalties to you. Statements will be made available to CD Baby, and CD Baby will also be responsible for registering works and updating works in our database. So think of it this way: if you have an admin deal with a CD Baby takes care of everything MLC. We are so happy that you joined us here, but your catalog will be worked on and paid out to CD Baby or whoever your admin is. But it's a good question. I did want to get to another great question from Jerry, which is, what is the difference between HFA and the MLC? As Evan mentioned, they are our data vendor. They are great colleagues of ours, but we are two separate organizations. I think the biggest difference between the two of us is that whereas we are limited to digital mechanical royalties from the DSPs from under the blanket license, HFA does far more types of mechanical licensing that we don't do. So that's why we do share, we don't quite share databases, but updates made at one are made at the other, because they are, we are two clearinghouses essentially of mechanical licensing, but the MLC just does the one. HFA does, mechanical licensing for physical and for all sorts of other sorts of formats where mechanical licensing is needed. We fill in each other's gaps, essentially.
Great. So we have another question from Michael asking, do you license all music on YouTube? For example, clips of classic films with music published with music score we publish, or just official YouTube music content? So Michael, this goes back to the points on the initial slideshow, where the MLC does not collect or distribute revenue to any usage related to audio-visual content. So if you're referring to, for example, classic film that uses a work that is in your catalog, that would fall outside of the MLC's scope of work because it has that visual component of a video. That being said, there are aspects of YouTube that are covered by the MLC, such as YouTube Music, which is YouTube's audio streaming platform, similar to like a Spotify or Apple Music. Things like that are covered by the MLC's database, or sorry, the MLC's blanket licenses. There are actually a specific breakdown of the usages covered on each DSP on the MLC website, which we can drop in the chat for y'all if you want to get more information on that.
Yeah, that's great. Got a new question in from Israel, but as before, we have a few new follow-ups on the sort of question about administration, so let me get to those first. David mentioned for self-administered publishers on the MLC, is the distributor or the publisher the point of contact? Again, that would go to the nature of your deal with the administrator, and I would encourage you to discuss that with them. If, again, you have an administration deal with Songtrust, CD Baby, or DistroKid, and they are doing the administration of your works, they are the MLC's point of contact for your catalog. If there's any question about updates, payments, statements, they would be handling that for you. If you are a self-administered publisher and you haven't entered into some sort of administration deal with a TuneCore or DistroKid, and you are totally administering your works on your own, then you would be the point of contact. But again, I would clarify that with your distributor. I can't say one way or the other, as I'm not sure what you might have agreed to with them. Jeff follows up and asks, our writer held off on doing registrations because she was thinking she might enter an admin deal. We noticed that other collaborators have registered some of the songs, in some cases with an incorrect name for our writer and or inaccurate shares. How do we address this if others had put in inaccurate info? Well, I think the first question again would be where these works are going to be administered. If it's yourself, you can go into the tool and start registering shares. And if you need to make changes, you can reach out to what you can't do in the portal, because there are some limitations as to removing shares or updating writer information at times. Our members or services team member services team will assist you in making any changes you need. However, again, I have to stress, if you have an admin deal, again, whether that's a CD Baby or Song Trust, and they are responsible for making these updates, I would encourage you to reach out to them with those concerns. That's kind of the good thing about our public search tool, is that it can also help facilitate your conversations with your administrator. So let's say you have a deal with CD Baby and they work on your catalog, ensuring it's updated in our database correctly. You have the freedom to look up that song and say, hey, they misspelled my name. And then you can reach back out to CD Baby and say, would you please make this correction? I've noticed some mistakes. You can't update that on your own because, again, that would be your administrator's responsibility. But it is something that you are able to refer to in our public database to have better conversations with your administrator. But the new question I wanted to refer to is from Israel. He asks, what is the process? What are the steps for sending the distribution to the data quality initiative? So I think we might be mixing up a few points here. The data quality initiative doesn't necessarily have to do with our distributions, our monthly distributions. What the DQI is we work with some third parties for a fee paid by the member to help identify ways in which your catalog can be updated. It essentially takes everything we have on file for your catalog with essentially a listing of your catalog that you've provided, and we compare the two. We will compare anything that might be missing, anything that might need to be corrected, and highlight that so then you can go in and proactively clean up your catalog. If you need some more information, we could drop a link to the DQI page on our website in the presumably the chat box, where you can find some more information and some contact information, because that will need to go through our teams that work more closely with DQI.
Great. So Stacy is asking, is it required for a member of Sound Exchange to receive royalties from the MLC? Can you pay out royalties to songwriters directly? And can songwriter manage and collect their own royalties for themselves? So Stacy, again, this kind of goes back to where the MLC's role within the music industry. There are a variety of different types of royalties that are generated for works depending on how they're used and the type of ownership associated with the usage. So Sound Exchange collects a different type of royalty that's related to a different type of ownership for a song. The MLC collects a type of royalty called digital audio mechanical royalty, which is a specific type of royalty generated every time a work is streamed on a streaming service or downloaded on that same streaming service. That type of royalty is exclusive to the MLC and is not collected by other organizations. Likewise, Sound Exchange collects a different type of royalty that is exclusively collected by Sound Exchange and not collected by other organizations. So you'll have to register with both organizations to want to make sure you're collecting the full piece of the pie, so to speak. We've talked a lot about administrators in this webinar so far. So if you wanted to work with an organization like Songtrust or CD Baby, they may do that on your behalf. However, it is fully possible to do this on your own as a songwriter and collect these royalties. It just is a little bit of extra work to make sure you're registering with all the different organizations.
On that note, before my next question, we do have a few follow-ups regarding administrators. So let me help provide some further clarification. First, David did follow up and mention that I do have a distributor, but I registered my works on the MLC on my own. This is why I'm confused about who has the onus of providing payouts. Again, that goes to your deal with your administrator. You may have a distributor that records, or excuse me, that distributes your master recordings, but you may not have entered into a deal with them that includes mechanical licensing. I myself do have a distributor for the music that I make, but I do my mechanical licensing on my own. So if that's the case, then David, you're correct in registering those songs to our database on your own. But again, I would confirm that with your distributor, because if you do have a deal with that distributor whereby they administer your works, they would be responsible for everything down to the registrations of your songs in our database. So I would direct you to reach out to them for further clarification on that. Andrea asks, whoops, Q&As. Andrea asks, going back to Songtrust, it seems like 80% of our catalog is missing despite being registered at Songtrust. I'll follow up with them, but does the MLC have a feature where clients can access, edit, or register their portion of the parent catalog? Again, that answer is no. If you are registered with an administrator like Songtrust, CD Baby, DistroKid, you name it, they are the point person for your works and your catalog with the MLC. They are responsible for registering them. They're responsible for updating them. They are responsible for taking them down. There is no function whereby you can make those updates on your own, because that is Songtrust's responsibility, and that's the deal that they had entered into with you. We would encourage you to discuss those matters more directly with the administrator, because as far as the MLC goes, our relationship would be with Songtrust. So those changes and those updates need to come from Songtrust.
Great. So Philip is asking about kind of a follow-up question to the HFA and MLC relationship. If we've been registering catalogs on both HFA and the MLC and have been indirectly creating duplicates for those works, how do we correct this and ensure that our works are not in conflict because of the duplicates? So Philip, there are some safeguards in place whenever works are being registered. If the information is very similar, they may be flagged as duplicates and get rejected. However, things do slip through those safeguards from time to time. So if you find that you have mistakenly created duplicates of works in your database, I would recommend going through your catalog and identifying those duplicates. Once you do so, you can reach out to our support team with a list of those duplicates, and we can start the process of merging them, assuming that there's no conflicts on the works. If you're the one registering the works, I'd assume that there wouldn't be a conflict in shares, so it should be an easy merge. However, if there are conflicting shares, we'll have to reach out to all the parties on each duplicate and make sure that we can merge without that conflict.
We have a good question from Michael. He says, you mentioned that you account to CMOs in other parts of the world. Would I be correct that a claim by a direct MLC member will take precedent over a claim by a society abroad? I'm thinking particularly of those societies where writers are normally due a writer share of mechanicals direct from their society, Gamma, Sasam, etc. So it's a little off from what we said. What we were outlining is that we don't replace CMOs or a sound exchange. We collect royalties from within the United States, and you're right, we do distribute them worldwide. So you can be somebody that lives, in Germany or some other country. I don't know why that's the one that came to mind. If you've earned US streams and mechanical royalties, we will pay that out to you. I think the heart of your question goes to sort of what we've been talking about with administrators. It goes to the deal that a writer would have with those societies. There are a number of writers that do have deals with these societies, and these societies themselves will register the songs to our database. But I think it would go back to what your administration, what the writer's administration deal looks like with the society. If that includes US mechanical rights, then they would, again, be responsible for registering those shares to our database. What is important to note is that we don't collect or break royalties out for the writer share. We just pay out US mechanical royalties to self-administered publishers self-administered songwriters and publishers around the world, as long as they are US mechanical royalties. So I think a lot of these questions, it really gets to the heart of who should be the point of contact with the MLC. And a lot of that comes down to whatever the writer's deal is with their society, or what the publisher's deal is with potentially their distributor or administrator. I think the recurring theme here is check your deals with the folks that you're working with, and that should provide you the clarification you need. But good question. Happy to follow up as needed.
Great. Gerardo reached out asking, we administer many members and publishers and register dozens of new songs each week. When we register them, we always try to input the ISRCs of the musical works, but a few weeks ago, we were told that doing this does not make a difference when it comes to what matches are found. Does the MLC have plans to utilize these ISRCs to find the matches of these works? So Gerardo, there's kind of an important clarification there. I'm unsure exactly how it was communicated to you initially. However, the MLC does utilize ISRCs in the matching process. The important clarification is that the ISRC does not guarantee a match. So it's a bigger piece of the puzzle where we're matching usage to works in the database using things like ISRCs, but also the writers listed on the work, the title, any alternate titles, things like that. And we use all of that to basically try and make the best connection as we can to works, to usage provided by the DSPs. So providing ISRCs where possible really is the best practice, because more data does help ensure more and more accurate matches. So just remembering that it doesn't guarantee all matches. And in those cases, it's still best practice to, after registering a work, checking in the matching tool to make sure there's nothing that got skipped over.
Vito asks, we own 2 publishing companies. Each has a PRO affiliate. Oh, yep. Jumped on me a little bit. There we go. Each is also signed with Sound Exchange, and each has a digital distributor. Given that, is it necessary to belong to the MLC, or is this redundant? So echoing back to a few points, number one, we do not replace Sound Exchange. We, in fact, collect an entirely separate royalty from Sound Exchange. So honestly, you should have registrations with Sound Exchange as well if you're trying to collect all of the money that your recordings have earned from everywhere. Again, echoing a few answers ago, it depends, however, on your deal with your distributor. If your distributor solely collects master recording royalties, gets your recordings up on the DSPs, and there's nothing in your deal that outlines their administration of your mechanical rights, then yes, you should sign up as a member with the MLC. But again, it gets to the heart of your deal with the distributor. You may sign up with them to have them administer your mechanical licensing. And in that case, it would be redundant. We would ask you actually to not sign up as a member, because the registration of your works, the collection of your mechanical royalties would all be done by them. So I would reach out to your distributor and discuss that in greater detail.
Great. Andrea is asking, does the MLC collect royalties for songwriters on compositions that are recorded as covers by another artist, or does the royalty go to the cover artist? So Andrea, you may already be aware, but just want to make sure everyone's on the same page, that when it comes to songs being streamed or used in any way, there are 2 main types of ownerships that go along with it. There's the recording itself, and there's the underlying composition. The MLC is only concerned with the underlying composition piece of this. So in the case where your work is covered by a songwriter or covered by an artist, we're only paying on the composition, and assuming that they didn't do anything to change it or claim any writing credits on it, the owner of the composition will still just be paid for that cover song. Any usage of that cover will be reported to us by the DSPs. And again, assuming that your data is all clean and accurate, those should be matched to your work registration, and you should be paid for that. The cover artist does not receive those mechanical royalties from the MLC.
Let's unmute there for a second. Okay, Donald asks, if my DSP reports to the MLC, how do I make sure that my administrator has that information? Does the MLC do the matching from the administrator and the DSP? Yes. So if you have an administrator, let's say that's Song Trust, they should be registering your songs to our database. And from there, we take the monthly usage data we get from the DSPs, and we match that usage data to what your administrator has registered to our database. That's what our distributions are based on. That's where your royalties are based on, is that matching between what's been registered to our database. And again, in this case, what your administrator has registered to our database and the monthly usage data that we get from the PSPs.
Great, so Charlie is asking, when submitting a song to my PRO, ASCAP, the writer share and publishing share is listed as 50-50. When submitting to the MLC, would that be 100% under the publisher? Yes, Charlie, so because the PROs are concerned with both the writer's share and the publisher's share, that with ASCAP at least, they work on 100% pie. So that 50% is like 100% of the publishing. So when you come to the MLC, you're going to list 100%. For those of you out there who use BMI, they work on a 200% scale. So you might see the 100% publishing and 100% writer, which adds up to 200%. That's more of a one-to-one relationship versus with an ASCAP or potentially other PROs that work on a 100% scale. You have to do some basic math there to get it up to line up with the MLC.
I will always have somebody else help me with my math because I'm not very good at it. It's not my strong suit in school. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. I'll leave it open for another second or two, just in case we have any kind of late breaking questions, but a lot of really excellent questions today. We really appreciate everybody sending them on. It's been, thank you, Michael. I get it. Really great questions today. It was a real joy getting to speak with you today. We have lots, oh, there we go. We actually have a great question. I am a library publisher that provides with film music that could later be streamed to YouTube. Will HFA registration handle what could be needed by the MLC? I would reach out to discuss that with HFA directly. Again, we do not collect any audiovisual royalties, and that includes from Spotify videos. So if you have any questions, oh, we have a couple more questions. Let me finish up. We do not collect anything audiovisual, so I would encourage you to reach out to HFA for further assistance. I believe that they might help with that, but again, we can really more speak to what the HFA does and doesn't do, and we are not involved in the collection of audiovisual royalties in any way.
Gerardo is asking about rejections in the MLC portal. So whenever works are rejected by the MLC, they are put into the registration history and listed as rejected. But Gerardo is saying that in this situation, it's time consuming to check through registration history and is asking if there are any plans to generate a list of rejections instead of having the member check the registration history repeatedly. So at this point, Gerardo, there is not a specific plan to have a section solely dedicated to rejections. However, in the future, there are always updates coming to the MLC portal. For example, in match history, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the matching tool, but match history now has filters that allow you to filter through the different statuses. So that may be something that could come in the registration history. However, at this point, we do not have a specific timeline for updates in that point.
Yeah, I think it's always good to keep in mind that the MLC is still very new, so our portal is still very new, and tools like the matching tool are actually still in beta. So we are very thankful for all of your feedback. We take it all into consideration and know that, you know, as we continue on, our tools, our portal will, you know, have new functionality and be, you know, made even better for you. We have a question from Stacy. Unfortunately, it's not one I think we can really assist with. It asks, what agencies would songwriters need to register with to replace what Songtrust does specifically? If you're a self-administered songwriter, you can register your songs directly with the MLC, but we really can't, I don't know, recommend other publishing houses or mechanical rights collections companies. They are out there. We really couldn't speak to, recommendations about replacing a distributor or replacing what you might already have, unfortunately, we can't really speak to that.
And David has another follow-up question. Is it possible that the distributor acting as my administrator without my knowledge is simply using my publishing company name with the DSPs and communicating back to the DSPs as his admin to send royalties our way? So David, again, that would fall outside of the MLC's scope of work. We are kind of bound by what is reported to us by the DSPs and what data is in the MLC database. If there are kind of shady deals happening behind the scenes and what's being communicated to us, we do our best to make sure everything is as clean as possible. However, if things are happening without your knowledge, it would be necessary to check directly with the distributor and making sure that you're all on the same page. The MLC is not necessarily able to make sure that all parties utilizing the platform are also in agreement, in addition to the data in the database being correct.
Yeah, that's a great question. Great answer. I think that's a good one to wrap things up on. Apologies if you heard a dog barking. I got a new dog. He's trying to figure out his apartment. We love him, but he's a little stinker. So hopefully that wasn't too loud for any. Without any further questions, thank you so much for joining us today. I think we touched on a lot of really good points. Thank you, David. Really appreciate you joining. We do, again, these webinars, I think bi-monthly at this point, but we do have a raft of really helpful webinars that we suggest you join us for. I myself do a monthly webinar about statements and downloading and interpreting royalty statements. They're all really great, so we hope that you join us in the future. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out to us at any time via the portal, via email. We have a phone number you can call. It's all on our website. We are happy to assist you in any way we can. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, Al.